Hi everyone, I'm Miranda and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm excited to be sharing my summer to be read pile with you. I thought we could plan a little bit together. Maybe this might inspire you to think about what books you want to read over the rest of summer. And I'd love to hear what you're planning to read and if you like any of my suggestions. I didn't used to plan my reading particularly. I would just read very spontaneously, and I think there's a lot of charm in being able to do that still. But it is also fun to read in a bit more of a structured way sometimes and really think about what you want to read and why. And because so much of what I do on social media now centres around books, and I have a booktube channel, I definitely have become a lot more methodical with my reading. I do tend to plan out what I want to read because I have certain videos I want to post, for instance, and I want to do some reading for them. Or I know that there are going to be some books that you would probably quite like me to read and give my opinion on, because what I love so much about YouTube and all of you who watch me on here is that we all have such similar taste in books. So it's really fun to be able to share what I'm reading and want to read with you, and to feel like you'll enjoy that as well. So I've got a great big pile here. I mean, I don't think you'll be surprised that my to be read pile is really overly ambitious for the rest of July and August, but I can't help it. I'm like a kid in a candy store when I get loose on my bookshelves, and there are just so many books I want to read. So obviously I might not make it through all of these books, but we'll see how I do, and I thought it would be fun to share. I don't have a cup of tea today. I've got an elderflower cordial because it's so hot today. And I just wanted something really cool and refreshing. This is really nice. I mean, we're lucky that our home stays quite cool even in really hot weather. That means it's freezing in winter, obviously, but right now we're just loving that the temperature inside at least is cool, but it's really hot outside. But anyway, I'll share what I've actually just started with you. So obviously this will be a book I want to finish reading, and that's The Swiss Summer by Stella Gibbons. I only started this yesterday evening, so I'm only at page 16. It's quite tiny print on this one, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I love Cold Comfort Farm by Stella Gibbons, but I don't know a lot of her other writing, and Dean Street Press, which is an independent publisher I really love, fairly recently republished this book by her. I think it was originally published in the 1950s, that kind of era, and it's all about a middle-aged woman who is very tired of London and a little bit tired of life, particularly in post-war London and the restrictions of rationing. And she's got a very sociable husband who loves to have lots of parties, but she's a much more romantic soul, and she's actually yearning for the countryside and a bit of an escape from the madness and the hardships of London just after the war. And she receives a surprise invitation at the start of the book to go to Switzerland and to help a very rich elderly lady's companion to sort out her chalet there. And like I said, I've only just started it, but so far I'm definitely enjoying it, and I'm really looking forward to being transported to Switzerland myself through this book. And Stella Gibbons is generally quite a funny writer, so I'm hoping this will be quite a light, funny read, although I think that there is quite a lot of depth to it already so far, so I'm definitely intrigued, and will be keeping reading this one and will keep you posted. And then I always have an Audible book on the go as well, and generally audiobooks for me are almost always rereads. I just love getting very familiar with books through listening to them often over and over again. So I'm listening to Frenchmans Creek by Daphne du Maurier right now, which is a reread or a re-listen for me, and I'm loving it. I'm going to be doing a video soon about brilliant books set in Cornwall, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to reread this one. So it's fresh in my mind, and it's such a good story. I'm just really enjoying coming back to this. It's the perfect summer read too. It's set over a summer in Cornwall. It's a historic novel of hers, and it's about a woman who she's just sort of turned 30 and she's bored with her life in London, and she yearns for adventure. She yearns for escape from her husband and her children for a bit. She travels down to their country estate in Cornwall, and there she realizes that a French pirate is being hunted throughout Cornwall, and she discovers that he is harboring his ship in the creek on their property. She meets the pirate and there's this instant attraction between them. They are both in some ways outlaws, they're both on the run, they're both sort of outsiders of society, and they have this immediate bond. So it's just classic Daphne du Maurier, such brilliant writing, such memorable characters, loving it so far, and I'm a little bit further than this actually on my audiobook, but I'm sort of almost like halfway through it already. Really loving that. So both of those I should finish pretty soon. And then I had started this book. This is sort of sitting on my bedside table, and I forget how you pronounce it, but she actually says in the beginning, Devagila. Hope that's right. Devagila Days, a memoir of hope and healing by Kathleen Hart. And this is a memoir, and it sounded really appealing. It says, 8 years ago, Kathleen Hart was diagnosed with breast cancer. Further complications led to a protracted recovery and months spent in hospital. While recuperating, she came across a small whitewashed cottage for sale in Wigtown in Scotland. Driving hundreds of miles on nothing more than a few photographs and an inkling, she bought it that very same day, naming it after I've forgotten again how to say it, this is the issue. Devagila, the formidable 13th century Scottish princess. And Wigtown, or Wigton, is a book town in Scotland with lots of lovely bookshops, so that sounded so appealing to me. But when I started reading it, I realised that there's actually quite a lot about Kathleen Hart's struggle with breast cancer, and the story flashbacks a lot to that time, and I mean, wonderfully she recovered from it. But when I first started reading it, we were waiting for results on my mum's latest scan. She recovered, thankfully, from breast cancer a few years ago now, but she has like yearly checkups now. And when I picked this up, I realised I actually really don't want to read this right now. It will just make me more anxious. But so happy we got the results of the scan just a couple of days ago, and everything's fine, which is wonderful. So now I feel like I can actually return to this. I do struggle sometimes reading books that have a lot set in hospitals in them, because I don't like hospitals. My mum is a cancer survivor twice over, but she almost died when I was 3 years old, and my earliest memory, I think, is of seeing her in hospital at that time, and it was quite traumatizing for me as a very young child. And I think I do struggle a bit with books even now that have a lot about hospitals and illness in them. It's just not a space that I kind of like to be in when I'm reading a book, if that makes sense. So I'm willing to give this one a second chance, but I think if there's too much hospital stuff in it, I will probably just have to shelve it. But yeah, we'll see. I did quite enjoy it when I was starting it, and now that like I know everything's fine, I think I'll be in a much better place to read it. But yes, just a warning on this one too. If any of you kind of feel the same way, struggle with that, then this might be a bit tough. But I think obviously as well, in the end, it is a book about her healing and recovery, which is wonderful. But I really hate hospital stuff, so we'll see on that one. So I'm not sure if I will keep going with that. In which case, I'm kind of debating another couple of non-fiction books, because I would like to read something non-fiction still over the next few weeks. So one is The Eternal Season, Ghosts of Summers Past, Present and Future by Stephen Rutt. And this sounds very good. It says, summer is traditionally a time of plenty of warmth, a time to celebrate abundance. And so Stephen Rutt sets out to explore the natural world during its moment of fullest bloom. What Stephen notices too, however, the many ways in which the season is becoming deranged by a changed and changing climate. So it's very much about Stephen Rutt witnessing summers and so many of the joys and beauty of summer, but also an examination a bit on climate change. So definitely a good book to read right now, and I'm really intrigued, and I am drawn to this one because it's summer and it seems the perfect time to read this book. So maybe you can help me decide between these three non-fiction options that I have. Which one do you think I should read, or which one would you like to read the most? Because it's hard to choose sometimes. And then the other option is another memoir. It's Where Stands a Winged Sentry by Margaret Kennedy, and I've picked this one up again because I recently read The Feast by Margaret Kennedy, which I absolutely loved. I ordered this a few months ago and haven't had a chance to read it yet, and this I think is sort of extracts from her diary or a memoir of her time during World War II. So that ticks a lot of boxes for me. I'm really interested in Blitzlit, as they call it, and I think this is meant to be a very interesting memoir of that time, really telling it how it was. So that intrigues me, and also I'd like to find out more about Margaret Kennedy and about her life. So please let me know which you think of those three I should maybe prioritise as my non-fiction summer read. But then let's get on to some other fiction. I picked this up in a charity shop quite recently, Hullabaloo in the Guava Orchard by Kieran Desai, and I've heard really good things about this book, so I was really pleased to find a copy. It's meant to be quite light-hearted and fun, I think, and very charming. It's about a young man who's really struggling with life. I think it's set in India, and one day he just climbs up a tree and becomes a sort of hermit, and it's about the villagers' reactions to this and sort of what happens. And I mean, I don't know that much about the plot, but just that little bit of it I'm intrigued by, so I'll have to see what I think of this one. But I think it's set in summer too, so I thought it might be quite a light, fun, summery read, so we'll see. And then there are a couple of books actually that I want to order and read, and this is here to remind me of that, because I actually just recently read this. It's A Sky Painted Gold by Laura Wood. I'll be talking about it more in another video upcoming, but I enjoyed it, and I thought I had the sequel, but actually I realised that I have the sort of third book that she's written. It's not a series, but she's written some YA novels that are set in the 1930s generally, and this one is set in Cornwall at, I think, in about 1929, 1930, that kind of time, and I enjoyed it, and I thought I had the sort of next one in this vein that Laura Wood has written, but actually I have the third one, and that one is more of a wintry one, so I'd like to order this other one by her, which I think is called Under a Singing Star or something like that. I'll put it up here so that you'll know. Under a Dancing Star maybe. And that again is set in the summer. The action takes place a lot in Italy, and it just sounds like a really light, fun, sort of summery read, which I'm really looking forward to diving into. So I'm going to order that one. And then there's another book I want to order. I had to stop that and go get my iPad because I couldn't remember the name, but it's Leila Slimani's latest book, The Country of Others, and I absolutely adore her writing. I first discovered her when the book Lullaby came out. I think she always writes in French, so I think this will be translated from French as well, her latest book, The Country of Others. And it sounds so good. It's set in 1944, right after the liberation of France. And it's about a young newly married woman who moves with her husband to Morocco. And I think that they move to a farm there. And she very much feels like an outsider, and she and her husband get sort of caught up in the politics of Morocco at that time, which is fighting for its independence. And it just sounds like a really good read. And like I said, I absolutely love her writing. So I've been excited about this latest book by her for a while. So I definitely ordering that one. It's out the start of August, so I know that that's one that I'll be reading in August. And then another novel in translation that I want to get to is 3 Summers by Margarita Liberace. And Penguin very kindly sent me this book, but I was really happy to get it. I really like this series of Penguin books. It's called the Penguin European Writers series, and this one sounds so good. It's a classic Greek novel, and it's about 3 sisters and 3 summers spent in their lives as they grow up and become young women. I love the start of the book, the first sentence, or the first 2 sentences. That summer we bought big straw hats. Maria's had cherries around the rim, Infanta's had forget-me-nots, and mine had poppies as red as fire. That definitely draws me in straight away and sets such a summery mood. So I'm really looking forward to getting to this one as soon as possible. And then something that I do, which I actually didn't really realise that I did, but the good thing about YouTube is that it makes me reflect more on how I read, what I read, and why I read it. And I realise it's something I generally think about when I'm planning a few weeks of reading, is I like to include what I think of as palate cleanser books. What I mean by that is I like to have some options of lighter reading of books that I know I will pretty easily get drawn into. So sometimes I find it very difficult when I get completely wrapped up in the world of a book. And this happened when I read The Feast by Margaret Kennedy recently. I read the book in about a day. I was just so drawn into it, kept turning the pages, and I was so caught up with the characters and the world that when I finished the book, it was hard to come out of that world and immediately pick up something else that would really require a lot from me in a way again, you know, that would really draw me into a world again. And sometimes when I've had such an intense kind of reaction to a book, what I like to read next will often be something quite light that I know I can pick up and enjoy, but won't be too taxing a read. So for instance, A Sky Painted Gold was that kind of book for me. In fact, I think this is what I read after I finished The Feast. I picked this up and it was just instantly kind of easy and light and just quick to get drawn into, but it didn't have the depth of something like The Feast. So I like to have that kind of book up my sleeve. So I have a few options for that style. I generally choose things like a YA book or a children's book, maybe a light mystery, or Barbara Pym, for instance, is always a good option for me. I've been steadily rereading a lot of Barbara Pym's books the past few months, and I'm up to No Fond Return of Love. And this I think of as a palette cleanser, not in any way to disparage Barbara Pym, because I absolutely love her and I think she's a brilliant writer and there's so much depth to her writing. But it's a book that I know I will find it easy to just pick up and kind of instantly get lost in. And her writing's always very light and accessible and I just enjoy it. So I know it will be easy for me to sort of swap into the world of Barbara Pym, even if I've been really caught up in some other book previously. So she's great for that. So I've got this on standby kind of if I need it this month, and then I will probably definitely read Crooked Sixpence by Jane Shaw very soon. This has been published by Girls Gone By, and because I manage their Instagram account, I'll be reading and reviewing this soon. And they have other books coming out this summer that I'll be getting over the summer and reading as well. But they're very slim and fun, and they're vintage children's books that have been republished. This one is set near Bath, and it's about a young girl and her sister and their friends who have an adventure, and the young girl's like coin collection becomes key to sort of solving this mystery. And it sounds like light and fun. So that is another book that I'll have on standby. And then this is another I'd like to read, Thimble Summer by Elizabeth Enright. I love The Saturdays and what was it called? I think Gone Away Lake by Elizabeth Enright. And Thimble Summer. I loved all of these books when I was little, and it's been so long since I reread them. I'd really like to come back to Thimble Summer in particular. But yes, so these are the kind of light books I have on standby that just are good kind of in between some of the more serious or just more intense reads that I might experience. So other books on my to-be read pile. It is a bit big. We'll see if I can manage all of these. But what I'm quite curious about is Summer Will Show by Sylvia Townsend Warner. And this intrigues me. It's a historical novel by her, and it's set during the French Revolution, and it's about a fairly young married woman who gets drawn to her husband's mistress. And really though, I think more than anything, the book to me sounds like it's a lot about communism. Sylvia Townsend Warner was herself a communist, and I think a lot of her ideals come out in the writing of this. But I think it's quite critical of all politics in a way too. I think she's meant to be quite clear-eyed in how she writes in this. So it's quite a political novel. I think first and foremost it is more a novel of politics than of romance. But it sounds very interesting. As you know, I love a lot of Sylvia Townsend Warner's writing. Really enjoyed her short stories quite recently. I love Lolly Willows by her, so I'm intrigued to find out a bit more about other books that she's read, and this one sounds interesting. It's called Summer Will Show. I don't know if it's set all in a summer. I'm not quite sure if it's a particularly summery read or not, but we'll see. So that's a bit of a maybe. I don't know if I'll get to that for sure this summer, but I would like to, so we'll see. Okay, this one I know will be a summery read. It's Statues in a Garden by Isabel Colgate. Very intrigued to read this. The publisher kindly sent this to me a little while ago, and I would really like to get to it soon. I loved The Shooting Party by Isabel Colgate, and so I'm very intrigued to read this by her. It's also set just before the start of World War I. It says it is 1914, the old standards are going, there is bitterness in politics, talk of civil war in Ireland. But all this means little to Cynthia Weston, attractive wife of Cabinet Minister Alma Weston. Together with their nephew Philip, she will commit a betrayal that will implode all she holds most dear. So that's not giving away much, but it sounds really interesting. And it has a great sort of opening line. It says, "The sun shone all summer. Everybody knows that." That's so true, isn't it? That you always remember summers of yesteryear as, you know, being sunny and hot, and it just is so nostalgic. So I love that sort of opening line and definitely want to get to this one. I'm excited for that. And then I had some Waterstone points that I could spend, which I always really enjoy. I picked this book up, which is Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And this sounds really good. It's a historical novel again. I think it's set in the 1950s, I think. And it's set in Mexico, and it's meant to be really quite gothic. And I don't know too much about it, but I've heard good things, and it just sounds like it might be quite a good, gripping sort of read. And yeah, so I was really pleased to get that. I love when I have Waterstone points I can spend, and I was really happy to pick that one up. And then I have a couple of poetry anthologies that I'll just be continuing to read throughout the summer. So this rather battered looking one I'm absolutely loving. It's Another World Than This, and it's an anthology compiled by Vita Sackville-West and her husband Hal Nicholson. And I love the end papers on this edition. And it's interesting because I was looking at this a lot in the winter and really enjoying it, and then somehow I just didn't pick it up for a few months. But then a little while ago, I think I either read an article or maybe it was a Desert Island Discs that I listened to with Rumer Godden. Yes, I think that's what it was. And she actually mentioned this anthology as one of like the books you'd take on a desert island. And that made me kind of remember that I had it and pick it up again, and I'm absolutely loving it. And I was just so interested to hear Rumer Godden say that this was a book she would choose, because it's quite a special anthology. It's divided between the months of the year, so it's quite a good seasonal read in many ways. But some of the themes they pick out for different months of the year can be quite surprising and unexpected, and I enjoy that about this. And there are lots of quotes that you just don't come across so much. Some things like French poems or Latin, for instance. I think they've translated themselves occasionally, so it's really interesting, and I'm really loving that little poetry anthology. And then I'm also still working my way through a poem for every summer day. I've got my bookmark in it, and I love this bookmark. It's from Haywood Hill, which is a wonderful bookshop in London. Yes, because it says July at the top. And they have a sort of series of little monthly bookmarks that are designed by Cressida Bell, who is the granddaughter of Vanessa Bell. So I love that little detail. Anyway, so yeah, I'm still enjoying this anthology a lot too. It's just on my bedside table. And then really quickly, I thought I'd just show you some cookbooks that I'll be looking at over the next few weeks as well, because you know I love cookbooks. And one that Mum and I often pull out in the summer is this one from Honey & Co. It's food from the Middle East. We love the Honey & Co restaurant in London, and my mum absolutely swears by their hummus recipe. She actually just made hummus from this the other day, and it's one of our favourite things to eat in the summer, so we always make the hummus recipe from in here. And there are lots of good recipes though, but that one's a real favourite. And then this is a new cookbook that I got quite recently. La Vita Dolce, Italian-inspired desserts by Letitia Clark. And I mean, you know that we love our desserts and our cakes. And this one is just full of really delicious looking recipes, and one I have earmarked is this coffee and brown sugar granita with whipped cream. That looks so good, and granita is something that is so fun to make in the summer when it's really hot. My mum absolutely adores coffee granita. It's one of her favourite things, so I have to make this for her. She's going to love it. Then I was pulling out this old cookbook, Forever Summer by Nigella Lawson. You know how I love Nigella, and I was just flicking through this the other day and remembering so many recipes that I used to make from this, and then I kind of forgot about it. Like there are really good salads in this one. There's olive and watermelon and feta salad that I used to make all the time, and there's one with chicken and parsley and flaked almonds that I would make a lot, and I just forgot them. You know how sometimes you'll get into a cookbook and you'll make a lot from it and you love the recipes, but then after a while you kind of just forget them. And I realised, oh, I don't make those anymore, and I really should. So this is one I'll be picking up again this summer and making some old favourites from. And then finally, I always love Susan Branch's books. I love her blog and I adore her books, and this is the summer book by her, which is mainly recipes. But even if I don't always cook the recipes, I love to just look through, because her illustrations and her little handwritten notes in the books are just, I don't know, I just love them. And she can really bring a season alive so well. Like I love this images of summer, and she's got a pile of books to read, wild blueberries, Saturday morning farmers market, like all of these things that just scream summer to me. So I love just browsing through this and getting inspired, but it also just helps me to appreciate the season more. She's got an old-fashioned picnic menu in here, which is so fun, and so many nice recipes and just little quotes and things like that. So yeah, this is also something I know I'll be dipping into over the next few weeks. But anyway, it's been really fun planning my reading a bit with you. I hope you've enjoyed this video too. Do let me know which non-fiction book you think I should read, and if any of these books appeal to you, or if you've read any of them, what you thought. I'd love to hear. So yes, I'm going to have a busy reading time ahead, aren't I? But let me know, do you plan your reading? What will you be reading? I'm eager to hear. Thanks so much for watching. Do give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and you can subscribe to my channel by clicking on my face that pops up on the screen over here. But I'll see you again very soon, I guess on Friday, for another video. So take care, goodbye.